Well, hello again. Now, we've got a few showers today, which is interfering with what I'm doing around the place. So I thought I'd watch a bit more YouTube, and I put a bit of thought into what Gary Nolan was saying about his crash retrieval teams. Private crash retrieval teams. We're talking about extraterrestrial spacecraft crashes in, UAP crash. Retrieval teams, private teams that are going to get there before the government. Now, personally, I think that's impractical nonsense. But, let's consider the practicalities of something like that. Let's just assume that it's real. ET doesn't come here and crash, they never have. But let's just assume it happens, okay? So you've got to get there before the local police, because if something crashes, the first thing people are going to do, they're going to go out there and they're going to call the cops. That's what's going to happen. So you're going to have to mobilise a team and get them to the site before the local police get there. And I'd suggest that's going to be impossible. Just a little bit of logical thought. It's going to be impossible, isn't it? Any of the locals, as I said yesterday, any of the locals that get there, we're going to be live streaming it all over social media. So the chances of getting a private recovery team to the crash of an ET craft before the government authorities get there is nil, absolutely nil. And what I didn't mention yesterday, of course, was that when I said it could be recovered by the military or others, the others would of course be the ETs themselves, because as I said, if you've got a small vehicle that crashes here, the actual big mothership, like the aircraft carrier type part of it, would be the interstellar part of it, would send a recovery team to collect their people and all the materials, so they're not going to leave us any technological or biological material to study. It just wouldn't happen. They're not going to help us get to them, as I've said many times before, because we could potentially destroy them. So if one did crash here, the ETs would recover it. The cops and the army, the military, are not going to be able to prevent that recovery. The technology will be such they just put some sort of blister over it, and no one will be able to get anywhere near it. But what has Gary Nolan got in mind? Now, we're talking about the US only, presumably here, okay? So these teams are going to have to be available 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. People are going to have to be prepared to drop whatever they're doing and go and retrieve this crashed ET, this spacecraft. Now, if this happens during the day, are these all retired people? Do they have jobs? Is it going to be like the beginning of the movie The Gumball Rally? You're in a meeting, someone comes up and whispers something in your ear, Gumball, gone. Are people going to be in a position where they can just walk out of meetings? Walk out of a classroom if they're teaching? Walk out of any kind of day job that they do? And once they've done that, what happens then? Do they muster locally as a team and then travel as a team to wherever this crash is? Are they going to have response vehicles paid for by Sol and others? In the southeast, the northeast, the northwest, the southwest and central, so that they can muster where the vehicles are? How many vehicles are we talking about here? I mean, if they're going to have to fly to the nearest town to a crash, they're not going to be able to take guns with them, are they? Nolan says that he doesn't want them to get involved in a firefight, so he's expecting them to be armed. They're not going to be able to take guns on a plane. So where are they going to keep the response vehicles? What sort of response vehicles are we talking about? They're going to have guns inside these response vehicles? Is it going to be like Thunderbirds, where they're going to have pods with different pieces of recovery equipment in there, depending on what sort of recovery mission they're going to get involved in? Are they going to get the call? jump out the window, slide down a ramp. You know, when they get to the bottom of the ramp, they'll already be wearing their blue overalls and their yellow wellies, and they'll slide through the sunroof of their response vehicle and be away. Is that what Nolan has in mind? With the Thunderbirds theme playing in the background. Are all these people going to be living on a secret island in the Pacific or the Atlantic and fly to these crash retrieval? I mean, the more you think about it, the more ludicrous it is, isn't it, really? And people aren't going to want to be on call 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. No one wants to do that. Now, so there's going to have to be a roster, you know. So they're going to have to look at the team, see how many people they've got, and then say, okay, how many people are we going to need for a recovery at minimum? So you need half a dozen, okay? So that half a dozen people is going to have to be on call for one period, say a week or 2 weeks, where they are available for 24 hours a day to go and respond to this. So if it's 2 weeks, then you're going to have another team for the next 2 weeks, another team for the next 2 weeks, another team for the next 2 weeks, until it comes round to the first team again, if you see what I mean. I do a job, I've always done this sort of thing, not recovering alien spacecraft, but where I've got to be available for a period. At the moment, it's 1 week. I have to be available 24 hours a day for 1 week every 7 weeks. So I'm in a fairly small team, and the other guys do the other weeks in between. You know, there's a guy who's on call this week, there'll be a guy on call next week, and the week after, and then it's my turn again to be available 24 hours a day for a week. So when you're organising these on-call rosters, you know, you've got to sit down and think about the people that are going to be responding to this. If you're at barbecue, you know, you really don't want to get a call and then leave the barbecue. You know, or you could be at a wedding, or you could be at a family function. You know, you could be sitting in a movie theatre when you get an on-call thing. You know, now personally, when I'm on call, I don't do any of that stuff because I know the phone could ring any minute. I'm going to have to leave. So, and no one's going to want to do that for 365 days of the year. So you've got to sort out an on-call roster. Okay, so you've got a team, and you say, okay, it's going to be split into 4. They're going to do 2-week blocks, and that's going to rotate around. No one's going to want to be on call Christmas. This is what happens in the real world. And you know, obviously, I get paid for being available, for being on call. I get paid for doing call outs and that sort of stuff. So are these people going to be paid for this? Now, normally payments for on-call jobs are reasonable, quite reasonable. So if you've got a reasonable team, you're talking about a reasonable amount of money you're going to have to pay people to be available, to be on call. Even if they're paid by others to do their day jobs, you're still going to have to pay them. I mean, you might get them to volunteer for this, but the novelty, I think, will wear off very quickly. When they're sitting at home for 2 weeks, they can't go and do anything because they know the phone might ring any minute and they're going to have to go. Of course, the phone is never going to ring because ET doesn't crash here. But we're in Nolan fantasy world at the moment. Remember. So. The more you think about it, or the more I think about it, the more impractical it all becomes. You know, so you've got a few people that are doing different jobs. They all get the call. They go to a local muster point, and then go from that point. Well, it'll probably be the local muster point will have to be where their vehicles are. They're going to have to be all-terrain vehicles. They're going to have to be able to handle any kind of terrain. So they're going to be expensive. They're going to be expensive vehicles. They're going to have to be well maintained. They're going to have to be well stocked with all sorts of stuff, including guns, if they think they're going to protect their find with lethal force. Where's all this coming from? Now I can imagine, you know, there's a lot of these outfits out there that are e-begging, you know. So I mean, if something like the Soul Foundation had a lot of money in the bank. You know, they could go and buy some all-terrain vehicles and they could kit them out and all that sort of stuff. And they could say, okay, we're going to have a couple of these vehicles in the southeast, a couple in the a couple in the south west. In the northeast. A couple in the northwest, and a couple in the southwest, and a couple in the middle. How much are we talking about there? You know, these vehicles are probably going to be $250,000 each if you get something reasonable that's going to do this sort of thing. You're going to be needing more than one of them. You're probably going to need 2 or 3 of them, and you're going to need recovery machinery. Are they thinking about recovering big chunks of it? Are they thinking about just recovering handfuls of stuff that they can prove by distributing it amongst several universities that it's ET material? Is that all they're interested in? You know, they seriously think they're going to put a flying saucer on the back of a truck and take it somewhere. Where are they going to take it? You know. So the more you think about, or the more I think about this this private recovery team's nonsense spruiked by Gary Nolan, the further into the nonsense category it gets. You know, they're going to have jazzy uniforms with patches on, UFO recovery team. Another patch here, shh, don't tell anyone. You know. Someone like that. Stitched onto it, you know. What are they going to do for communications? For secure communications? You know, there's so many things that you'd have to sit down and thresh out if you were really seriously going to do this. It's going to be extremely expensive, and it's going to be for nothing, because the phone, they could be all sitting around in their nice blue uniforms with the patches on, you know. ET recovery team number 1, you know. I'm the boss, I'm the captain, you know, or the major, you know, have a little thing on there. And waiting, you know, day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out, decade in, decade out. Red phone on the desk, doesn't ring. They don't get one call. You know, they might get a few a few false alarms, you know, because there's half a dozen crashes a month in general aviation in America, isn't there? You know, got amateur pilots flying around all the time, ending up in someone's living room or swimming pool or in the roof. You know, how many times are they going to waste their time going to something like that because it's been misreported? And again, you know, they can't fly to an airport nearest the crash with any weapons. And when they get there, what are they going to do? Hire a Land Cruiser, hire a Range Rover, hire the recovery equipment to go and do the job when they get there. Even if they could do that, when they get there, the local police are going to be there. You know, the local population is going to be there. iPhones or mobile phones, live streaming it all to the internet, you know. And Nolan can sort of sit there and say this, and he has no idea how pathetic that sounds. It's complete and utter rubbish, isn't it? You know, it's probably something to spend some money on, so it looks like they're doing something. But it's not. It's like the rest of the UAP visiting ET story. You know, it's not real. Well, UAPs might be real, but they're nothing to do with ET. They quote Harry Reid. You know, Harry Reid, big statement in the independent newspaper in America. You know, it's Vlad. We know it's Vlad. You know, the UAPs buzzing American warships are Russian. They know that. It's a big article in the paper. Harry Reid said that. And they quote Harry Reid as setting this ATIP thing up. And that was the conclusion he came to. It's all a waste of time. So just try and imagine, you know, the sort of vehicles, the sort of equipment they'd need, firearms, how they're going to get there. Are they going to get there before the cops? No. You know. Even if they've got 5 teams, you know, one in each corner of the country, one in the middle, they're never ever going to get there before the local cops. I mean, if an alien spacecraft crashed down at the bottom of the hill, you know, the cops are going to be all over it within minutes. People are going to be live streaming it to the internet. You know, well before anyone else gets there. You're not going to have some sort of recovery team appear out of nowhere and fight the police with guns. You know, and he can't see how ludicrous this sounds if you just think about it. You know. Yeah. So just think about that. If they start e-begging for money to set these teams up, just think about what I've said. How practical is it? How likely is it they're going to be called? How likely is it they would be able to respond and get there before the local authorities? None of that, you know. They might be able to make a YouTube video with some really nice all-terrain vehicles and loads of kit and all this sort of stuff, but it's never ever going to be used for recovering an alien spacecraft. They're never going to be able to get in it and drive to a crash site and get there before the police and the local residents do. Unless it crashes through the roof of the building where they're keeping all this stuff. You know, it's like the Gremlins, Avi Loeb's Gremlins, and this other outfit's, I can't remember what they call them now, it's that box of super sensors, you know. The thing's going to have to be flying over it to be able to detect it. And something I didn't mention yesterday, I said, oh yeah, you know, they've got a disco antenna, the Avi Loeb's thing. Part of his sensor array is a disco antenna with wideband receiver, and I mentioned that he might be able to use that as a passive radar, you know, radio and TV station. Signals will be disturbed and they could figure out, you know, how far away it is and where it's going and that sort of stuff. What they wouldn't be able to do is listen for any emissions coming from it, because it's not a directional antenna. And some of the emissions supposedly from these things are in the sort of 3 gig band, I think, something like that. But they're sort of they're designed by terrestrial opponents because they know what frequencies to generate to jam radars, Western radars, and that sort of thing. So they're not. It's going to be a complete waste of time. And I think the reason that we haven't seen any results from any of this stuff that Avi Loeb's got around the place or on top of the Harvard University, I think it is because there are none. There are no results. It's just going to pick up all sorts of local clutter and be completely pointless. So just have a think about that. If they start e-begging to set up private recovery teams, think about what I've said, how impractical it is. It might be okay as a show of, you know, look what we've done with your money. Look at these vehicles. Look at these smart uniforms and patches. You know, if you want to join one of these teams, get in touch with us and let us know. But it's only only for show. It's a cosmetic exercise. So okay, we've got money coming in. We can make a nice living out of this. Actually, we're producing this. You know, we've got these vehicles here. Look at what we're doing. But it's never ever going to be used for recovering alien spacecraft. Never. They're never ever going to get to the crash of an alien spacecraft before the local cops, before the local community. They'll be live streaming it. You know, it's complete and utter rubbish. Anyway, I thought that was. You know, I was just thinking about it because it started raining and I had to stop what I was doing. So I was looking at a bit of YouTube and I thought, you know, private ET, private recovery teams for recovering crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft is complete and utter rubbish. I just thought I'd make a very, very quick video to give you my opinion on the subject and point out the pitfalls of it, and there are many. So, you know, Put your uniform on, wait for the call, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade. At what point do you say, this isn't happening, it's all rubbish? Of course, they've sucked up an awful lot of donations during that period, but you know, it's going to be going on barbecues and that sort of stuff for the team that's not on call, obviously. So the team that's on call can't drink, you know, they can't really get involved in any social activities because they may have to just drop what they're doing and go. That's what being on call is all about. So, yeah. As always, if you've struggled through the video all the way to this point, many thanks for watching, and maybe I'll catch you again.